Hey guys, in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make 3D extruded text all in After Effects, such as this right here. It's a little bit long because I do some explaining, but I always believe more explaining is better. Less explaining is bad because you don't learn anything. So if you want, put this tutorial on 2x speed and go ahead and just get some knowledge. But anyways, it's a very simple tutorial on how to create this 3D extruded text. You can use in intros or anything else. So without any further ado, thank you guys for tuning in, and let's get into it. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to create that cool extruded 3D text as you saw in the little intro segment. You'll need a few things. First of all, I'm going to be creating this in Adobe After Effects, and you'll need the Trapcode Echospace plugin from Red Giant. But that's about it. And if you don't have After Effects or you don't have Trapcode Echospace, which is a little bit extra money, you can actually get this text with no software required by going to my website, TGODdesigns.com, go into Other Assets, and right here you can go ahead and customize this, put your own name in, change the text to whatever you want. Say you want it for like a thumbnail or a banner or something, you can put like your name in, blah blah blah, and of course you can like change the colors to make it look however you want. But basically this is what we're going to be making today for free. If you want me to make and render for you, it will be about $2. So that's a not free alternative, but if you want to actually delve in and create this yourself, I will go ahead and show you how to do so right now. So what you're going to want to do is open up Adobe After Effects, and as always we're going to start off with a new composition. I'm going to make it nice and wide, not the traditional 1920 by 1080, just so we can get like some really long text going, say, like, you know, just in case the text that we want is a little bit longer. So I'm going to name this, might as well name it text, and then I'm going to make the width something like 2000, and the height 750 should work. And the duration doesn't need to be anything because we're not making an animation, we're just doing one still frame. You know, I might recommend Photoshop for something like this, but I just do it in After Effects because I feel that After Effects has all the perks of Photoshop plus motion. So I tend to use it a little bit more than Photoshop sometimes. Anyways, that's a little side tangent. Go ahead and create your composition, and here you'll see that we have our timeline and everything else we'll need. Make sure you have your character panel open by going to Window and then selecting the character panel. And we won't really need anything animation wise. Preview a line we might use. Just get your layout set up so that all the panels that we'll need are accessible, and of course make sure your preview panel is somewhere in there so you can see what you're doing. I'm going to go up here to the text tool and start creating our text here. I'm going to name this tutorial, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off the transparency grid here. I'm going to go ahead and center this by holding Control and clicking and dragging our text around. This text looks atrocious right now, so I'm going to go ahead and go over to the character panel, double click the color and bring it up to a nice white. And I don't know how to fill on, but I'm just going to go ahead and zero out, or a stroke, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and zero out my outline / stroke to 0. And that is looking a-okay. Let's turn our kerning down to 0. And that is that. I'm not so happy with the font, so I'm going to change the font to a nice American Captain, is I believe what I had in the text from the intro. And let's go ahead and let's change some of the kerning around, kerning being the spaces between letters. So I'm just going to go ahead and, I created a space there. So I'm going to go ahead and use the text tool to go back into my text here. And I'm going to hold down Alt and press the left and right arrows to nudge or push away some of the letters from each other. And I'm going to go ahead and do this for each letter to kind of give it a more fitting look and make the letters flow together a bit better. I keep putting in spaces because I'm trying to move around my screen here. Let's go ahead and move that over to see what I'm doing. And yeah, just change around the kerning, make sure it's satisfactory. And that is looking a about good. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, this being a tutorial and all, but that looks about a-okay. And I'm going to go ahead and center my anchor point by going to the anchor point tool and moving it to the center, holding Control to snap it there. And I'm going to go ahead and use the Align panel to align it to the center of our composition. So there you go. That is our text. I might stand to scale it up a tad to fit our composition here. And that's looking pretty good. Now, what we're going to want to do here is create an outline for this. As you can see, if I pull up the example again here, you'll see that it has this box outline. And we'll get to the curving part a little bit later. But right now, let's just pretend that this doesn't have an angle, like an arc to it. And if we break it down, this is basically some text and a background rectangle around it, and we'll worry about the extrusion as well later. So that's the next step. So we got to create our background. So what I'm going to do is use the rectangle tool to go ahead and create a nice rectangle around our shape here. I've got this god-awful stroke going, but I think that's about right. We can always position it around a little bit later. So I'm going to click up here to stroke and click none, and go up to fill and give it a nice gray, dark gray fill, like such. And turn on my transparency grid again and move the rectangle beneath our text. And there you go. We see that this is starting to come a bit more together. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and move that around to center it, and that looks about good. If you need to change the size of your rectangle, you can drill down into these little twirl down menus and go to Contents, Rectangle, Rectangle Path, and of course you can change the size from there and unlink the two properties by doing this little chain link option. That way you can do the width and height separately when you go ahead and start changing things. So that's that, and tutorial, and we have the background. So let's take a look at what is next. So what's next is let's go ahead and let's do this glint. You see how the bottom half of the text is a darker shade than the upper half? That's basically just a little glint you can apply. So I'm going to go here to our tutorial layer, and I'm going to go ahead and create, or actually what we're going to go ahead and do is, there are multiple ways to do this, and I'm just trying to think of which way is the best right now. Let's go with the most intuitive way. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, and let's hide both of them. So we have this one on the bottom, and we have this one on the top. And since the one on the top we just created by duplicating the one on the bottom, they look about the same right now. So they're both the same. But the top one we want to make a little bit darker, because this will be our glint. And when we add a glint, it's going to do it to the whole thing, but we'll restrain it to the bottom half of the text first. So to do a glint, what we're going to want to do, or we just want to darken it, we want to add a hue and saturation from the color correction submenu. And in the hue and saturation, to bring down the brightness, all we have to do is turn down the master brightness a little bit down, and even that should be good right there. Now you see that the whole thing is a little bit darker, as opposed to the bottom one, which is purely white because we haven't applied any change to it. So now what we have to do is restrict this darker top layer to the bottom half to give it that glint effect. Now you can do this a few ways, first of which is you could create a mask by using the rectangle tool with your text selected. Otherwise you'll create a new shape if you don't have an existing layer selected. And you could do this and just mask it out. Masking is basically just restricting a layer to a bound that you define using either the pen tool or one of the primitive shapes up here, such as the rectangle tool. And you can go ahead and use your selection tool to go ahead and deselect everything. And you'll see that this achieves the glint effect. You could go a different way and use track mats to do it, but for this tutorial I will just be using the masking tool to go ahead and do the same thing. So now you'll see that we've gotten most of our effect, for the text at least, down. We've got the glint, we've got the background rectangle, and now what we have to worry about is there is a little subtle detail with an inner shadow. And you know what? I wasn't going to show you how to do that because I thought it was pretty straightforward, but I'll go ahead and show you. So for the inner shadow like that, all you pretty much have to do is, if we want to do that, we'll have to pre-compose these two, or I'll show you what happens if you don't pre-compose, I guess. So the one on the bottom is basically more or less our text layer, because it is the full thing. This top one is only half. So all of the effects we want to apply to a text, we'll do to the bottom one. Since this is just a little overlay going on. So if you right click and go to layer styles, you can go up here to inner shadow, and you can go ahead and play around with that. You're gonna have to zoom in to see it because it's a little subtle, and then you can change the distance of it, and you're gonna need to turn down the opacity a bit, and maybe the size go down to 0 to give it a sharp edge right there, and you'll see that we're creating that inner shadow, and you can play around and make that how you want it to look. So that is the text. Now let's worry about bending it. And you'll see that if we go back to our example here, the whole thing is a little bit of an arch. A little bit of an arch going on. So how do we do that? Well, there's a wonderful effect called it's either warp or mesh warp. I think it's mesh warp. But what we're going to want to do first is pre-compose everything to treat it as one image. Right now we've got this, and we got this, and we got this, and we got all these different components. And if we want to apply a bend to all of them simultaneously, we're going to have to tell After Effects that we want to consider this all as one piece of footage or one image. So we're going to do that by pre-composing and turning it into its own consolidated bundle of singularity. I don't know how else to say this. So we're going to name this text, and this is my preferred pre-composition naming scheme. If I'm pre-composing something, I'll just do a -1 right there to say this is the same text composition we're working with, but there's one more nested composition if we double click into it, which is the stuff we've been working on. Not important. You can name it whatever the heck you want, but that's just what I do. So now you'll see that this is now one piece of footage. Instead, when we double click into our pre-comp that we made and reveal the stuff that's inside of it, well, we've got this, and we've got this, and we've got this. You get the point. So we're basically telling After Effects, hey, I've pre-composed this, and I want to treat this as one layer. So that's that. Now what we want to do is add warp. I believe it's mesh warp. Let's go ahead and take a look. Mesh warp. There it is. And you'll see that it creates this grid for us. Oh boy. So this is the fun part. It takes a little bit of finagling. But what we want to do is take our rows. Let's go ahead and click on our mesh warp property right here. And if you don't see this panel, you're going to want to go up to Window and enable Effect Controls right here. So under Mesh Warp, we're going to turn the rows down to, let's turn it down to 4. So we have one at the top, one at the middle of our text, and one at the bottom. And let's turn our columns up to, let's say, let's have our columns on 1, or sorry, 2. So there's one in the middle, and you can't see it very well, but there's one on each side as well. So there you go. We've created our mesh, and now we can start warping. So what you want to do to start warping is, if you look at the edges, there are these corners, these corner pins, if you will. And that is what we're going to be moving around to do the warp on our mesh. So you'll see that, let me grab, you have to click into the effect to kind of reveal these, and it's a little bit hard to grab them, but it'll take a few tries to grab them. And you'll see that you can start warping things. So this is going to be a tad tricky. Let's get our selection tool handy. It's going to be a tad tricky, and I'm going to turn off the transparency grid so we can more clearly see what we're doing. What you want to do to select a point on the mesh grid is find the vertex where the lines intersect and click on it once. That will reveal the point. And from there, after clicking on it once, you'll see these handles. There's one right here, there's one right here, and there's one right here. And what you can do with those is you can move them around, and it doesn't move the point per se, but it moves the interpolation between the points. So I'm going to go ahead and move this one up a little bit. And I'm not going to move it side to side, I'm just going to move it straight up, and that will create our bend here. And I'm going to go to this point right here and move the handle up, so it has a little bit of a curve to it. And you'll see that it's the line isn't very smooth. You'll see that it kind of snaps right here. You want to turn up your quality to 10, and that will give you a little bit more accuracy, I think. So there you go. I'm going to bring this in a little bit, see how it's stretching inwards like that. That is what we want, like that. Perfecto. And this one we're also going to have to bring in so we don't have such a rigid edge, like that. And I'm not going to move this one up or down. I'm just going to move it in so that we have a nice kind of line here. And we're going to want to go over to this side. Oop, and I have to click on my mesh warp property again to bring this up. And I'm going to move this up and kind of bring it out. Do the same with this guy, bring it out, and you'll see that we have these kind of slanted edges. And this will take you a while to really nail. It's kind of a tedious process, and I can show you a simpler way, but it won't necessarily give you the desired effect. This takes a little bit longer, but it'll get it. You can do a lot with this. Like, there's a lot more freedom with this. There's another effect called just warp, not mesh warp, and it gives you a little bit less freedom. And some of the effects might be weird, so I'm going to disable this real quick, so I can show you just the regular warp. And this will do this sort of thing. You have less control over it, and I think what we're looking for is shell lower. So you have less control over it, but it'll more or less do the same thing. And you can change the horizontal distortion. What we're looking for is the vertical distortion, and that will do that. So kind of the same thing, but not really. You have less control over it, and it looks like the text is a little bit smushed at the bottom here, so I'm going to drill down into our pre-comp and select both of our text things and move it up a little bit by using the arrow keys. And that will give us a little bit more distance here at the bottom and kind of clean up the look. So I'll go ahead and do that. Mesh warp, it's what I did to originally create this effect. A little bit more control, but if you just want to save time, you can use the regular warp. Alright, so now we've gotten 99% of the way there, and what we have to do now is just extrude our text. Easier said than done. However, it's pretty easy with Trapcode Echospace. You can do this manually by duplicating it, moving it down a few, shrinking it down, duplicating it, moving it down a few, shrinking it, and faking it by doing this, moving it down a bit, shrinking it. You see, if we move all this stuff to the bottom, we can extrude it that way, and if we colorize this to be a little bit darker, you can see that we've created this kind of fake extrusion. And that's basically what Echospace does for us. It's just, instead of doing it manually, you have a plugin to it. So you can't do it without Echospace, it's just kind of a pain in the butt. With that said, let's go ahead and do it with Echospace, and if you don't have it, you can figure that out on your own, or get the template from my website, or whatever you want. Anyways, we're going to pre-comp here, and since we're going one layer higher, I'm going to do this text -2. Yet again, my preferred pre-comping naming scheme. You can name it literally whatever you want. And then now what we want to do is apply Echospace to this. Oh, actually, we pre-comped, but it kept the effects here. Let's go ahead and undo our pre-comp and make sure that move all attributes to the new composition is checked. And let me do that again. All right, now that we've pre-comped it correctly, let's go ahead and add Echospace to it. Echospace, basically just like a shape layer repeater, but for non-shape layer layers. And we're going to go to setup here, and we're going to make 10 instances, or actually let's do 20 instances, and repeat. And you'll see that the plugin just creates a whole bunch of the same layer. And using those, we can then drill down into the repeater submenu and actually start offsetting things. So we can offset it down. You'll see that creates this like line downwards because we're basically just moving each new copy down a little bit and creating this kind of sort of like warp effect. And now what we want to do is decrease the scale a little bit. So you'll see that when we decrease the scale, it gives us this parallel or this kind of 3D extruded look. So that's looking pretty cool. Now, once we've done this, we just have to change the color a bit so that the extrusion is a little bit darker. So this top one is our original guy. When we disable it, it disables all the ones below it because the Echospace plugin kind of it like keeps all these like linked. But basically, if I were to just take a look at this top one by itself, it is the text that we're seeing, and all the stuff below it is just extrusions, all these little extrusions. So what we want to do is everything below this top one, we want to fill with a little darker of a color. So how we do this is with an adjustment layer, and if we want to add a fill to it, we just go to our effects and presets, type in fill, and then drag a fill. Now everything below this adjustment layer will be turned whatever the fill color is. Right now it's red, so everything turns red, but we just want to turn it into a nice dark gray, or maybe even a lighter color, whatever floats your boat. And you'll see that once we have done this, we have our extrusion. And just like that, that is the majority of our effect right here. You'll see that we have our text, and it looks very nice and dandy. I'm going to go up to our top text here and just change the scale to, instead of -1.2, just negative 0.5. Or actually, that was way too little. Negative 0.5. Oh, negative 0.5, not 0.5. Negative 0.5. And you'll see that gives us a little better of a look here. And I'll change the Z offset to 0. And then the Y offset to 3. Or maybe 3.5. I guess just mess around with it, see what works. And just like that, that is pretty much our text right there. And you successfully created it. Pat on the back, good on you. You're doing well. And now what you can do is pretty much, if you're completely happy with it, you don't want to add anything else, you can go up here to Composition, Save Frame As, File, and then you can change this. You can click on where it says Photoshop here and change the output file format to a PNG. Make sure you have RGB plus alpha, otherwise the background will be a solid black and you won't be able to put it on top of anything. You want the background to be transparent, so that's what that does. Click OK, and make sure you have best settings selected here under render settings. And output to, we want to click on where it says text.png right here, and basically just select where on your computer you would like to export. And then you can go ahead and click render, and it will go ahead and render out your 3D extruded cool looking text for you. And that is pretty much the process of how to create this text. Not too hard, kind of fun to do, and you can of course in any one of these steps switch it up and do something that you thought of, and maybe you'll come up with something just a bit cooler than what I showed you how to do today. So anyways guys, if this tutorial was helpful at all, go ahead and leave a like to show your appreciation. Let me know, hey, yeah, I thought this was helpful. And chances are, if you found this tutorial helpful, your mate will, or your mom, or your dog maybe, your grandma. You want to share this tutorial with your grandma. Do it. But yeah, chances are, if you found it helpful, someone you may know might also find it helpful. So sharing is caring. Go ahead and share this video with them, whether it be on Twitter, text message. Apparently a lot of people share my videos on WhatsApp. I'm not sure what that's all about, but if you have WhatsApp, I'm not even sure what WhatsApp is, but if you have it, you can share it with this tutorial with your friends on WhatsApp. Anyways, all jokes aside, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comments section below. And of course, if you got lost in this tutorial, I'm willing to do this for you. If you want to pay me $2, please help my college tuition. Help me pay off my college tuition. Yeah, so those are all my cringy end of tutorial jokes. But that's pretty much it. I will see you guys tomorrow for another tutorial. If you have a tutorial suggestion, leave it down in the comment section below, and I will of course consider it for the next tutorial. Alright guys, take it easy, and I'll see you later. Peace.